Okay, welcome everyone. We are starting a whole new section of 70 Faces. For those who have the book and look in the table of contents, there are 7, we'll call them not chapters, but 7 parts. And we're starting a whole new part tonight about permutations, permuting letters. Now this is such an important method of the sages, Kabbalists, Hasidic Rabbis throughout the ages. And for those who have the book, we're going to start on page 279. And I'm going to read the classic like metaphor or parable about permuting letters. So in the 4th chapter, the 16th Mishnah of Sefer Yetzirah, it says, 2 stones build 2 houses. 3 stones build 6 houses. 4 stones build 24 houses. 5 stones build 120 houses. 6 stones build 720 houses. 7 stones build 5,040 houses. From here, go out and calculate that which the mouth cannot speak and the ear cannot hear. This is a classic part of the Sefer Yetzirah, and it's explained what's a stone and what's a house. A stone is a letter, and a house is a word. So if you have 2 stones, you can build 2 houses. What does that mean? You have an aleph and a bet. So you can build 2 words, aleph, bet, bet, aleph. If you have 3 stones or 3 letters, you can build 6 houses. That means if you have aleph, beit, gimel, so you can build 6 different permutations. Aleph, beit, gimel, gimel, beit, aleph, aleph, gimel, bet, until you have all 6. And then it goes, 4 builds 24 houses, 5 builds 120, 6 builds 720, and 7 builds 5,040. If you continue, it goes like forever. It goes forever. This is the classic understanding of permuting letters. Now, in the Sefer Yetzirah, they actually bring one example. Again, they don't wave a flag and say, this is an example of permutation. But it says in the Sefer Yetzirah, there's nothing higher than oneg and nothing lower than nega. Oneg means pleasure, like oneg Shabbat, the pleasure of Shabbat. And nega means a plague, a pandemic, a nega. In the Torah, tzara'at, the skin disease called tzara'at, is called a nega. But it's the same letters. Oneg, ayin, nun, gimel, and nega is nun, gimel, ayin. So this is in the Sefer Yetzirah. So it explains, it shows one of the examples. So this idea of permuting letters has been used throughout the ages to reveal deeper meanings, deeper dimensions, levels of words and phrases. And it's interesting because last week we ended the class, we were talking about different meaning of the same word. And for those who remember, the last example we brought was of in Tehillim 18. So the verse is, God whose way is perfect, the word of God is pure. And the word for pure is tserufa. And I pointed out last week that the other meaning of trufa, because we were studying words that have very different meanings. So it means pure, but it also means to permute. So in Hebrew, permuting letters is tziruf otiot, which you could also be read as the purification of the letters. Through changing their order, we, in a sense, purify them because we're revealing all their inner meanings. And so we mentioned that it was the great Kabbalist Avram Abulafia from 1,000 years ago who read it according to its meaning, permutation. Everyone else translates it as that the words of God are pure. But Avram Abulafia read it this way: God, whose way is perfect, is revealed by permuting the words of God found in the Torah. And so we learned this last week, and for those who are on the WhatsApp group, so I shared the Wikipedia discussion of Avram Abulafia because he is an incredibly interesting personality, and a very influential one. And here, when I started to prepare for this week, I see the very first thing is the idea of permuting letters. And again, we mentioned Avram Abulafia because of all personalities, he was the one who took this method and like he ran with it. And he created all kinds of meditations based on permuting letters. And he especially taught that, at least in the beginning, it's good to take pen and paper and take words and start to permute them. And he encouraged people to do this. And then he, in his books, he wrote actually very complicated meditations based on this idea of permuting letters. And along with it came his claim that by doing so, one could reach prophetic experience. That made him very controversial in his own day, as we discussed last week. And for those who haven't had a chance yet, you could read all about his life on the link that we put in the WhatsApp group. So, as I said, he, just like Rabbi Nachman, is very identified with the meditative practice called Hitbodedut. But he, as we mentioned, he didn't create Hitbodedut. He didn't even, in a sense, make it up. But what he did do is he put a tremendous emphasis on its importance and encouraged his students to be involved with this type of meditation, Hitbodedut, on a daily level. That was his tremendous chiddush, is he made it a centerpiece of serving Hashem in spiritual practice. So the same thing, Avram Abulafia took the idea of permuting letters and made it a major platform of his different teachings. So just in short, what do we gain from permuting letters? First of all, it's not a word game. What it does, because Hebrew is a holy language, every letter is pregnant with meaning. Every letter is a channel of divine light and energy. And so therefore, if you have a three, for example, the main root words in Hebrew are three letters. So if you take those three letters, you can permute them in 6 different ways. And when doing so, we reveal the inner life force, the inner spiritual essence that these 3 letters in different combinations form. And so therefore, they form different words, but they're all related. If they're coming from the same root, they're going to be related. So later in the Sefer Yetzirah, actually earlier in the second chapter, we already quoted the fourth chapter, but even before that, it says like this: 22 foundational letters. He engraved them. Now, this is talking about the he here is Hashem. And as we've said in many, many different ways, that the Hebrew letters are the building blocks of creation. So here the Sefer Yetzirah says 22 foundation letters. He engraved them, he carved them, he permuted them, he weighed them, he transformed them, and with them he depicted all that was formed and all that would be formed. This is a classic expression of the idea of the letters being the building blocks of creation. And one of the verbs here, but they're all connected: engraved, carved, permuted, weighed. They're all part of the creative process. And it's actually in last week's Parsha and this coming Parsha, Vayakel and Pekudei, where Betzalel is chosen to be the main artisan of the Mishkan. And it says in Masechet Berachot that Betzalel knew the secrets of permuting the letters with which God created the world. So what we learn from this is the idea of the Mishkan, the tabernacle, being a microcosm of the macrocosm of the entire universe. And just like God used the letters and permuted them, carved them, weighed them, transformed them, so Betzalel knew these secrets, and he was able to put together all of the different materials in a way that they would reflect divine energy and create a divine space called the Mishkan. So tonight, it's practically infinite when we get into permutations. As we saw already, 6 letters can make 720 words. So the most important work that deals with the idea of permuting letters is the Tikkune Zohar. This is one of the segments of the Zohar, the Tikkune Zohar. It may be the most quoted of all the sections of the Zohar, because it is just full of insight and innovative ideas. But the whole book is 70 chapters, which of course is reminiscent of Shivim Panim LaTorah, 70 faces of the Torah. And it takes one word, Bereshit, and through permuting the letters of Bereshit, it doesn't do all 720, but it does many, many, many of the permutations of Bereshit in order to, in a sense, teach the who, what, where, how, and why of creation. Of course, Bereshit is the first word of the Torah. And we're told, in a sense, the entire Torah is condensed into this one word. There are so many secrets. So here's an entire book called Tikkune Zohar that is based on permuting the 6 letters of the word Bereshit. So we'll just mention a few of them. And each one reveals tremendous insight, information, and understanding of creation. The who, what, where, why, and how. So one is Bereshit. We've actually learned this already when we learned about taking words and dividing them by their syllables. So Bereshit, sheet in Aramaic means 6. God created in 6 days. In the 6 letters of Bereshit is already a hint that the creation would take place in 6 days, but about Shabbat. So in the word Bereshit, you have Yirah Shabbat, the awe of Shabbat, or Yirah is also Ya'er, the light of Shabbat. So here, we say this in L'chadodi every Friday night, Sof Ma'aseh B'machshava Techila. The end of creation is already wedged in the beginning. So in the first word of the Torah, you have the word Shabbat. And the end of creation is, of course, the 7th day. And we're doing this very, very quickly. But each one of these, the Tikkune Zohar, can go on for pages and pages and pages discussing different elements of each one of these permutations. So one of them is Rosh Bayit. The 6 letters of Bereshit spell, when the letters are permuted, Rosh Bayit, which means the head of the house. And so the first letter of the Torah is Bet. Well, Bet means Bayit. So the beginning of creation is, as it were, all of the created universe is as if it's God's house. It's God's dwelling place. God wanted a dwelling place for himself in the lower worlds. So Rosh Bayit, the head of the house. God is the head of the house. Another permutation is if you take the first letter and the last letter, it spells Bat, which means daughter. And in the middle, you have the letters of Ashrei, which means Ashrei Bat. Joyous is the daughter. Now here, in relationship to God, the entire universe, the entire created physical and spiritual worlds are all the feminine in relationship to God, who's considered, as it were, the masculine. Of course, God isn't masculine or feminine, but in relationship, and this is the same thing with the soul. There are 5 words for the soul: Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya, Yechida. They're all feminine. All names of the soul are feminine because in relationship to God, because the soul comes from God and is a part of God. But again, in relationship, we are all, as it were, the feminine in relationship to God. Another one is Shir Ta'ev, or Ta'av, which means a passionate song, a song of desire. What is a song of desire? So this is the midrash that gives one of the reasons why God created the world. God had a ta'ev, a ta'ava, to have a dwelling place in the lower worlds. So based on this, I came up, this is not written in the Tikkune Zohar, I came up with another permutation. Now remember, 6 letters can make 720 different combinations. So the Tikkune Zohar does not cover all of them, but one of them that I came up with is Shirat Av, the song of the father. And the word Av, of course, is Aleph Bet, which means the alphabet. So it could be read the song of the father or the song of the Hebrew alphabet. So of course, this fits in perfectly with the idea that God created the world through the Hebrew letters. But for those who have my book called The Mystical Power of Music, so this becomes like the centerpiece of the book, this idea that it wasn't so much that God spoke the world into creation, because every morning in our prayers we say, Baruch She'amar v'haya olam. Blessed is the one who spoke and the world came into being. And so without taking too much time, I just do this short quantum leap that it's not so much that God spoke the world into creation as God sang the world into creation. And this actually goes very, very well with the very, very important Scylla theory, because there's no instruments in existence right now that can prove what's called string theory. But string theory posits that the smallest particles of existence are vibrating strings. And science, especially Brian Greene in his classic book, Elegant Universe, says on a number of occasions that the metaphor of music to describe the physical world has taken on a startling reality. In other words, science is starting to understand that, in a sense, what the mystics used to call the harmony of the spheres, the idea that there is music everywhere. So Brian Greene and many, many other top physicists now use music as a metaphor to actually explaining exactly how the world works. The whole world is vibrating. And of course, this is the basis of Perek Shira, the Midrash, according to tradition, written by David HaMelech, and some say also Shlomo HaMelech, later edited through many, many generations. But the idea is that every creation has a song. What is every song? The vibrational field around every entity. Every stone has a vibrational energy. Every tree, every river, every planet, every star, and every person has a vibrational field. And those vibrations are music. They are music. So this is our first example. I highly recommend for those who can do the Hebrew, the Tikkune Zohar. And if not, probably at this point, there must be some English translation of the Tikkune Zohar. And it's just a tremendous, tremendous idea. Okay, so I just want to point out something very interesting. Of all the roots in Hebrew, a root is a 3-letter root. So one would imagine that when like we learned, 3 stones make 6 houses. So one would think that of 3-letter roots, of which there are thousands, maybe tens of thousands of 3-letter roots in the Hebrew language, you would have so many that could be permuted in 6 different ways. But the amazing thing is there are only 7 roots in Hebrew that can be permuted in all 6 ways that have meaning. They all can be permuted. But in the Hebrew language, as it's developed, there's only 7 words that all 6 permutations have meaning. So that's an interesting thing. And for those who have on page 281. So you'll see that I just put it to a Magen David, the 7 different words that all can be permuted in all 6 ways. For those who don't, B'li Neder, we'll put this chart up on the WhatsApp group. Now, what's interesting is that all 7, I see that Sandra just shared a link to the Tikkune Zohar in your chats. So what's very, very interesting is, of these 7 words, there's only one letter that appears in all of them, and that's a resh. All 7 of them have a resh. Now, there's much that could be said about the letter resh, just like any other letter. Every letter is special. Every letter has something unique. One of the unique things about the resh, first of all, resh means rosh. Rosh means intellect. It means the intellect. But one of the unique things about the letter resh is it has the aspect of beginning, middle, and end. How is that? What's its connection to beginning? Because the word itself means Rosh, like Rosh Hashanah, Rosh Chodesh. It means the beginning, the new year, the beginning of the year, the new month, the beginning of the month. It has the meaning of middle, because from Aleph to Tav is 1 to 400. Tav is in Gematria is 400. Resh is 200. So actually in the Gematria of the letters, it's actually the middle point. It's 200 of 400. And it has the meaning of end because it's not the exact last letter, but it's one of the last letters. So, and that is very connected to permutations. Sometimes a letter is in the beginning of the word, sometimes in the middle of the word, and sometimes at the end of the word. So that's like a drasha of how we can understand that the only letter that appears in all 7 is a resh. Now, again, I'm doing this quickly because I want to get to more permutations, but Rav Ginsburg has pointed out there are many famous women in the Tanakh, many, many famous women. But Rav Ginsburg points out, interestingly enough, now it certainly isn't all of them, but many, many of the main women in the Tanakh all have a resh in it. And I will share this, B'li Neder, also on the WhatsApp group, but I'm going to just show you very quickly. Hopefully everyone can see this. And I'm just going to run through this quickly. In Keter, it's Sarah. In, oh, this is hard for me to see backwards. In Chachma, it's Rivka. In Bina, it's Rachel. In, where are we? Got it. In Chesed, it's Miriam. In Gevura, it's Devorah. Tiferet is Tzipora. Netzach is Tamar. Hod is Ruth. Well, I got blurry here. Everything got blurry, sorry. Yesod is Rachav, and Malchut is Esther. Okay, so we don't have time to go through all of them, but it's just very interesting that the one letter that appears in all 7 words that you can permute in all of its meanings is a resh. And here you have, I'll just say it again, you have Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Miriam, Devorah, Sipporah, Tamar, Ruth, Rachav, and Esther. They all have reshes in their name. So that's just that's like an aside there. Okay, we're going to continue with permutations. And now we're going to do different permutations of the word Yisrael. Because along with Bereshit, which obviously is a very important word, well, so is Yisrael. So again, when you permute a word, now this word has 5 letters. So it can be permuted in different ways, in different syllables. One that we just discussed is Rosh. We just discussed the Resh. So in Yisrael, you also have Resh. And one of the permutations is Li Rosh. To me is a head. And this is what is typically referred to as the Jewish cup, the Jewish intellect, the Jewish mind. There's something very deep about it. Many people try to understand how, and there's many answers to this, and I don't want to go into it right now because we'll get sidelined. But there's definitely an attempt to understand how is it that a people so persecuted, so scattered, so oppressed have made such a major contribution to virtually every country where we ended up. And like I said, there are many answers to this, but one just simply is this idea of Li Rosh, the application of intellect to every art and science and profession that there is. Jews have made a major contribution. And here we see it in the word Yisrael itself. Li Rosh, to me is a head. But we also have one of the most important Hasidic concepts called hitchadshut, to become new, to renew oneself, to be able to think outside of the box, to always be able to start again. So again, we said Rosh means beginning. So Li Rosh is, to me, is a head, but it also means to me is a beginning. The idea that the Jewish people have remade themselves, reformulated themselves constantly, because we've been expelled from place to place, either by decree or pogrom or crusade or expulsion or whatever. We constantly have to start again. So Li Rosh, to me, is a beginning. Another one that is well known is Yeshar Kel, straight to God. Again, by permuting the first 3 letters of Shin Yud Resh, you get Yeshar Kel, straight to God. And of course, there are many jokes about how we don't have to make any long distance calls. We have a local call. Everything is a local call to God. Yeshar Kel. Yeshar Kel. If you take the letters of Yeshar, you have Shir, the song of God. Now this goes very well what we just learned about God singing the world into being, singing reality. And so here in Israel, now, again, the idea of doing permutations is to take a word and by, it's like analyzing it. It's like putting it under the microscope and seeing how the elements combine themselves and how much inner meaning you can reveal. So this idea of shir kel, of straight to God and song of God, then you can put those together and say, what is the most direct way to God? Through song and prayer. Remember, the gematria of song, shira, is the exact same as tefillah, as prayer. Song and prayer, tefillah and shira are the same gematria, 515. One other one that I'd like to show you, and there are more, just like with Bereshit, but this is just a very, very interesting one. Is one of them is Yesh Rala. Yesh means there is. Rala, Resh Lamed Aleph, is translated as a number. Resh Lamed Aleph is 231. So there's one way to read it, Yesh 231. So the question is, but what does that mean? So what I'm going to show you is from one of Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan's books. It's called, it's actually Sefer Yetzirah. It's from the Sefer Yetzirah, his book, and he explains, he is talking somewhat about permuting letters, and he says that if you take each letter and connect it to one of the other letters, so you end up with 231 connections. What do I mean? Aleph, Bet, Aleph Gimel, Aleph Dalet, Aleph Hey, etc. Then Beit Aleph, Beit Gimel, Beit Dalet, etc. If you go through all 22 letters, and because you're not connecting it to itself, so the mathematical formula is 22 times 21. Because you have 22 letters, and each one is connecting to the other 21 letters. You end up with 231. And this is the chart that he put in his book of what it looks like. Now you see, these are the letters, okay? And if you look, from each letter is a line. Each one has a line. 21 lines are coming out of each letter. And this is what it forms. Well, this is like gorgeous, but they're basically 231 lines here. So this is like a classic idea of permuting letters. It's different than the 3 letters of a root word. This is the 22 letters to the other letters. And this is what it would look like if you did it in this manner. So what does that mean that Yisrael is Yesh Rala? So what this means in a sense is that there's an expression, Ein Devar Omed Lifnei Haratzon. Nothing stands before will. So this chart, in a sense, represents all possibilities. That's what it's like a metaphor, a symbol, a mathematical symbol for how many connections you can make. And so that Yisrael is Yesh Rala means that in our souls we have almost infinite possibilities. It's a very beautiful insight. It's a very beautiful idea and nothing stands before will. If I really want to spread my consciousness, I want to elevate my consciousness. I want to broaden my mind. I want to broaden my possibilities. Then nothing can stand in the way. So one last one is, I really want to start with the most literal one. Yisrael, in the Torah, when we'll call it the angel, confers this name on Yaakov after they fight. So he gives a definition of the name. Ki sarita im Elokim ba'anashim v'tuchal. If you go to Parshat Vayishlach, Vayishlach, when Yaakov is fighting with the angel, and then the angel gives him this new name. Later, God confirms the name, but Ki sarita im Elokim ba'anashim v'tuchal means you fought with God and man, and you prevailed. That's what the name means. And so the root of Yisrael is Sar, from Sarita. You fought, you struggled, and you prevailed. And why that is so important, because in a nutshell, this is Jewish history. And it affects every single person as well. This is our we'll call it our destiny, or fate, or both together. Ki sarita in Elokim v'anashim v'tuchal. So here again, close to the literal, one of the beautiful things about Yisrael is the 5 letters of Yisrael include the first letters of all the avot and imahot. The Yud is Yitzchak and Yaakov, and of course Yisrael. The Shin or Sin is Sarah. The Aleph is Avraham. I forgot the Resh, excuse me. Rachel and Rivka. The Aleph is Avram, and the Lamed is Leah. So you have all the Avot and the Imahot in the word Yisrael. But the one that is the closest to the root of Yisrael is Sarah. Because of Sar. The closest one is Sarah. And so this is, we'll call it a hint, an allusion to the very definition of who is a Jew. Who is a Jew goes according to the mother. And here you see in the word Yisrael, in the root Sar, which is the root of the name Sarah, the actual, in a sense, the essence and definition of who is a Jew. Okay, we have time for a few more. The other ones we're going to go much, much quicker. And that is on page 284. This is a classic one from Rashi. The classic one from Rashi is Yaakov is coming back to Israel after 20 years of being, out of the land. And he sends a message to Esav because he would like to enter into the land peacefully. And he says, Im Lavan Garti, with Lavan I dwelled these 20 years. And so Rashi takes the word Garti and he permutes it to Taryag. Taryag is the expression we use. It's actually a numerical expression for the 613 mitzvot. Taryag equals 613, just like Garti does. And so Rashi says that Yaakov was sending him a message that I dwelt with Lavan and I continued despite every interference to continue to keep the 613 mitzvot. So here's a classic Rashi using a permutation of the word garti. He switches it around to be taryag. So I just want to show that throughout our tradition, this method is used. Now, a very, very important one is on page 289. And it's a short piece here, but it's so important. The word machshava, the word for thought. What does machshava mean? So here's a also, but you could divide the word by syllables in a sense, is choshev ma. Excuse me, not really by syllables. It's a permutation. Machshava can be read choshev ma. One who thinks of ma. Now there's two ways we can understand ma here. One, ma is a question. Ma means what? Like in the Haggadah, ma nishtana halayla zeh. And throughout the Haggadah, you have the idea of questions. And of course, through the entire Talmud, all Jewish learning, in a sense, is based on questions. Ma nishtana halayla hazeh. So a thought is the idea of, everyone's heard this before, the better the question, the better the answer. And that good education means of teaching students to ask questions, ask themselves questions. Everyone also, I'm sure, has had the type of education where we were not encouraged to ask questions. We were expected to just take notes, memorize, pass our tests, get good grades, and Shalom al Yisrael. So we all know that that's not real education, but we've all experienced it. But the other meaning for ma, the word in Hebrew for essence, is mahut. So machshava means choshev ma, getting to the essence of things. There's 24/7 types of thoughts where our mind is just running and running and running and running. And then there's machshava. Actually, that kind of thinking, there's a different word in here in Hebrew, hirhur. Many times hirhur means a type of thought where we don't really invest ourselves in. We're not really all that connected to it. Our mind is just running. Machshava is getting to the essence of things. If you take the letters machshava and you permute them, it spells besimcha, in joy. This is a Torah from Rav Ginsburg. Machshava, the same letters, just permuted differently, is besimcha. And so this is telling us something very, very important, is that our being in a state of joy is ultimately based on what we're thinking. Or as the Baal Shem said, you are where your thoughts are. You are where your thoughts are. So if someone is, in a sense, determined to be upset, frustrated, depressed, sad, well, their thoughts are going to beam that energy, and that's exactly where they're going to be. But if one with determination, because it does take determination to be besimcha, but if we're b'simcha, then all of our thoughts, the way we see the world, that is what we're going to see. That is what we're going to experience. And so the next one is very connected to this, and that is just a very, very well-known one, but a very important one, is that the letters of Mashiach, when permuted, is yismach. He literally means he will be happy, but what it means more is he will make everyone else happy. Yismach. And this tells us something very, very deep about Mashiach. It's not like a cute little word game. Oh, Mashiach is the same letters as Yismach. But it's telling us something very, very deep, that the revelations that the Mashiach will share with the world will bring so much joy, will bring along with peace and revelation. That peace and revelation will lead to individual and national and universal joy. That will be the final product of the revelations that the Mashiach will share. So as I say often here in the book itself, there's maybe 15, 20 examples, but every time you take a root word, you can start looking for its permutations. And from its permutations, it's like a doorway, a gateway into understanding the deeper dimensions of the word, the verse that it comes in, and the Torah itself and life itself. So as I said in the beginning, these are not cute little word games. This is the way to get to the essence, choshev machshava, to get to the essence and deeper meanings of what the Torah is trying to relate to us. So I bless everyone. I bless everyone that when you're learning, to take time to do this. Look at the words and just like hone in on them. And I'm never at a loss of amazement what things pop out at you. You can learn the same parsha year after year after year after year, and then one year you look at a certain word in a verse and like, oh my gosh, look what's hiding there. Look what's been there the whole time. I never saw it. That's why Torah is so infinite and eternal, because we're very limited human beings. We can only pick up so much at one time, but that's the beautiful thing, is that we learn it over and over, and each time, that's again the Yesh Resh Lamed Aleph. There's like 231 connections waiting for us to discover. And but without the focus, the time, the thought, it just passes us by. So I bless all of us to take the time and really delve into the Torah using this method of permutations.